to cancel culture, hookup culture, or victim culture?
Well, neither could we. We created this platform for those other girls. Girls like us who want to give a different perspective from a Christian and conservative worldview.
We talk about life, work, relationships, pop culture, and everything in between. So let's be those other girls that just don't talk about culture,
but change culture.
Well, hello everyone. You are listening to Those Other Girls with Mallory and Friends. I'm Mallory.
And I'm Freeman.
And we are changing culture and bringing back traditional values.
Always and every day.
Yes, super excited for today's episode. Couple announcements before we get into everything. If you have not already, get your tickets for the Other Girls Tea. As of recording, there are only 2 tickets left. This will take place in Lynchburg. Yes, only 2 tickets left. It'll be in Lynchburg, Virginia, April 15th from 2 to 4. You're not going to want to miss it. I finally got my dress for the tea party and for the fashion show the day before. Have you got yours already, Freeman?
Yes. Also, okay. You cut it close.
Yeah, I did cut it really close. And you know what? That's typical Mallory fashion.
I like it.
Make sure you get the tea. Yeah, make sure you get your tea party. Make sure you do get the tickets to the tea party. Check out our merch. Join the Patreon. I think those are all the announcements I can think of. If this is your first time ever listening to this podcast, I want you to know this is not a normal pop culture podcast. No. We don't just talk about pop culture. We're here to change pop culture. We're here to change the world, really. And we're going to be talking about so many different things from the Christian perspective. So, but don't have that make you change from here. Because what we say, you might not have heard other Christians say. So you're going to want to listen. And today, we have an amazing episode from the creator of the Anxious Christian podcast.
Woo!
Woo! Freeman, can you introduce us?
I am so honored to introduce Tashyiah Monique today. I just got finished listening to her most recent podcast. Oh, so good. And it was only like 15 minutes, which I know I cannot do. And so the fact that you're able to make a podcast concise, I want to learn how to do that.
Same.
Anyway, she is a spiritual life coach. Like Mallory said, she's the host of a super cool podcast called The Anxious Christian. She found her purpose in life through her love of Jesus, which I like to think we all did as well. She's just currently balancing her identity as a wife, a mom, an entrepreneur, and that's not easy. And so while she was doing all of those things, she was also coping with mental health challenges. And I love that she's bringing light to the mental health crisis in a lot of ways, and especially doing it in a Christian perspective. She found comfort in knowing that she's not alone. Not only are there other Christians struggling, but there is also a Jesus who wants to help us heal. Driven by her faith, she created the Anxious Christian podcast, and now it's a source of inspiration for herself and others, just like Mallory and I. So, Tashyiah, thank you for being here.
So glad to meet you guys. This is really exciting for me. When anointings connect, something big is gonna happen. So I'm really excited for what's gonna go forth on today, interacting with you guys and really diving deeper into myself and the Anxious Christian podcast, and of course you guys as well. So thank you for having me.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah. Before we get into it, sorry you guys, I just had this thought. I think that this is so timely. A lot of popular podcasts or popular people who you follow that are kind of political or sometimes even spiritual, I feel like lately they have been really down. And I caught myself. I actually had to stop listening to a particular person for a little bit because it just felt so negative, and I was getting nervous. I'm like, oh my goodness, the apocalypse is happening next week. You keep hearing about all these things happening. So I think this conversation is going to be really good and really timely for what's going on, because just a lot of things are going on right now. We don't have to get into any of them. We all know, everybody knows what's going on. So a lot of things are going on. So I think it'll just be good to kind of get our focus back to Jesus. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, God is in control. Jesus is on the throne. Yes. And that's what matters.
Yeah, the end of the story is hope. This is not the end of the story. This is despair that we feel. So, Tashyiah, first of all, tell us where you're calling us from.
I am calling you guys from Sacramento, California.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Ooh.
That's why it's light there.
Yeah, the time change and everything. Like, I'm loving it now. Like, we're back to enjoying the full day. So, I'm excited.
That's great. Oh, that's awesome. And you're a mom, so tell me about that. You've got 1, 2, how many kiddos?
I am a mom. I have 3 kids. I have 2 boys, and I have 1 girl. Spice and nothing nice, you know.
Love it.
Daughter, I love her. But my daughter, that's of course the other ones are my babies, of course, my daughter, but she is like my little firebug for Jesus. I'd be like, oh, my baby, she loves him. She reminds me of me when I was little growing up, loving little.
Aww. Yeah. Is she the youngest?
She's actually the middle child.
Oh, she's the middle. Oh,
actually the middle child. So, yeah.
I was a middle cousin, but I never felt isolated or anything. So I'm glad. Let's bring light to the middle child.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And she's my only girl. I grew up also as the only girl in my family. I was the youngest, but I was also the only girl. But she's the only girl, so I kind of have that feeling of like, you know, do I do what the boys do, or you know what I mean? Do I follow mommy, or like, you know, trying to find your own identity in a masculine environment, you know? So I really relate to her on that.
Yeah, that's kind of how it was with me. I'm actually the oldest girl in my like immediate family, but my cousins that I was around all the time, I was the only girl. They were all the guys were like, I want to say like 3 or 4 years older than me until my brother came. So then there was another boy, and then I think my younger cousin. Finally, I think she's like 6 or 7 years younger than me, but still, like, there was still like a huge gap. So I definitely can relate to that. I was still super girly and I was so spoiled, you know. But yeah, no, I definitely understand the like, okay, do I play with them? And I really didn't. I've always been a girly girl, so I wanted to play with them because like that's where they were. But then at the same time, I was like, oh, but I don't want to do that. Like, let's do this.
Yeah, and so I ended up always being. I was around the boys, but I was bossing them around, and so she from me. Like I was left in charge, even though I was the youngest one. You know, mom said, you know, and so that's her. She's the nurturer for her little brother. Like she takes good care of him. I have to always remind her I'm his mom, so it's okay. So.
Love it. I love that so much.
Well, as we were telling you before we started recording, April is Faith Month, and we're so excited to hear a little bit about your testimony. I know towards the end of the month, Mallory and I want to come on and talk about ours, but why don't you just like dive right in and tell us what brought you to Jesus, where you're at now, where you come from, and what that journey was like.
Okay, well, we can start to, like I said, when I was my daughter's age, I loved the Lord. I used to get on a bus. I'll never forget Miss Susan. She was my Sunday school teacher at Regency Baptist Church. She would come get me on this bus, and I would rally up all the neighborhood kids, and we would get on the bus, and I'm like, you guys, if you're good, they're going to give you candy. So and then if you guys are quiet and you listen and you get the questions right, they're going to give you candy. So I rally up all the neighborhood kids, and we get on the bus. Miss Susan will take us to the church, and, you know, we'll sit there, answer the questions. We get our candy. Like, it was like the time of my life. Like, I was on fire for the Lord as a little girl. Like, I loved going to church. I didn't like missing Sunday school. My mom worked, she worked the graveyard shift, so in the daytime she would sleep. But of course, with her permission, I was allowed to go. So although I didn't go with my family, it's like I kind of congregated my own support system or family and brought them with me. So that's where my love for Jesus actually started as a little girl, getting on that bus and going to church then.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
wow. I can't imagine seeing like kids in my neighborhood being like, we're all going to church. And be like, don't your parents have to force you to go? You know, I'd be like,
like no force or anything. Because it's like you hear stories about people being like dragged to church, or they've been forced to go there and be there for hours, you know. And it's like I had a completely different experience. And so when I hear these horror stories, I'm like, really? Oh no, I love Jesus.
Yeah. No, I love this because I feel like we don't really hear a lot of stories from people who were kind of Christian at a young age and kept with the faith. I mean,
Yes.
you're human, so I'm sure there's going to be a point where you kind of wavered a little bit, but you know, you really don't hear that many stories like that. That's my testimony as well. Like I got quote unquote saved at 5. So I definitely understand the like, you know, getting raised like that. And we just don't hear that testimony often. So I'm excited to hear more.
Yeah.
That's good. That's cool.
Like it's crazy because it's like you said, you don't hear that often, and you always kind of hear your parents force you, and
Yeah.
you know, you have to go to Bible study, choir, Sunday school service before,
Yeah.
school, like, you know, and it just seemed like such torture. But I had the complete opposite experience, and like you guys were saying before, like, of course we go through experiences where our faith is wavering, and that did of course happen to me. So of course, like I said, I loved Jesus as a young girl, and like I always had this foundational relationship with him. But I got older. I went to school. I went to Sac State University. I ended up getting pregnant at a young age. Well, how old was I? I think I was 18. Maybe I was 19. One of those two. And I had moved out with my boyfriend, and I was still trying to go to school and do all these other things. But it's like I was stepping into life immediately after high school into adulthood, like full-fledged, like, you know. And so I took a leap of faith. We moved to Reno, Nevada. And that's where I gave birth to my son my oldest son. And once, because it's like, you know, like I'm in the middle of become a mom. I'm a college student. I'm still immature because I just graduated.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to still figure life out. Like, okay, there were times like I went to the club, you know, but I've always been shy and timid too. So I wasn't like, every weekend, let's go. Like, no.
Yeah.
But, you know, I did try to, you know, do 20-year-old things, you know what I mean? And stuff like that, but while also being mature still, you know. But during those times, it's when I felt like my faith was slipping. I didn't go to church. I wasn't really calling on the Lord like I used to as a little girl. And I had did a blog about this before. Once, so my husband and I, we had another kid, which was my daughter, our middle child. I had her still working, you know, trying to figure life out. Thankfully for us, it was hard, right? But we did have good stability. We had good jobs. He had a really great job and whatnot. So we had our house, our car, our kids, all these other things. But my faith was not where it needed to be. And like, it became a time where I wasn't putting God first, and himself either. He could attest to this. Like, God was not at the forefront of our lives, you know, and so that actually became a problem. And so my husband lost his job, and I had a job at a dialysis clinic where I worked 3 days a week. And so I started picking up extra shifts. Everything just kind of became hard and troublesome, you know, and God put us in a place where we were losing it all, right? Everything is starting to crumble. But when I look back at it now, it's like it had to all happen, right? Everything had to happen for a reason. Like this is this is the testimony part. I was living a life where God was not at the forefront of it. You know what I mean? I didn't feel like I needed God. God had to show me, you do need me. I come first before it all. And it took for us to lose everything for me to gain that understanding. And when I say everything, including my job, like I was at my job for 5 years, I want to say, at the dialysis clinic. And during COVID, I ended up getting fired. My license expired. The CDC closed down. So he didn't renew my license. So I got fired.
Wow.
I can't work without a license. And so it was like, that's all I knew, you know, and I felt like I needed that job. I need, like, that's my bread and butter, like that's what's supporting me. But it took for me to lose my job that I felt like I needed for me to realize I don't need that. I needed Jesus. That was a time for me to really test my faith and say, Lord, I need you. You said, God, that you will supply all of my needs according to your riches and glory. Seek your kingdom first, and all these other things will be added. And that's when I really stepped back into my faith and fully surrendered it all to God, and allowed him to guide my footsteps and really kind of put back the pieces and allow me and him, of course, to draw nigh to him and form a more intimate relationship where, he was the head, even before my children, because we have to seek wise counsel, right? And it's like, who is your source? What is your source that you're pulling from, and once I began to allow God to be my source and pull from him as my strength, for my strength, that's when I began to see a change in my life, like a full 360 transformation. Not that I was a bad person then, like I said, I was shy, timid. I went to work, took care of my kids. Like, my life wasn't that exciting, but still losing everything, in that situation that caused me to slip into the depression. I'm a mom. My babies were preemies. I'm still trying to go to work. I'm still young at this time. 25, I think, about this time. And it's like, now I'm feeling like I'm losing myself, through this entire process. And all I could do was lean and depend on God. That's all. I had nothing left but my faith to stand on, But it's like, I count it all joy.
Amen.
Really count it all joy, because it had to happen. And it's like, just really rearranging my life, to put God first above all things in my life. Before my job, I didn't go to church because I had to work. No Bible study because I had to work. I worked 12-hour shifts. I felt like I didn't have time for my kids, and all these complaints that I had, God took them. They were no longer, because now I had all this time. But I lost my time. I can go to football games. I can go. I have no excuse why I can't go, And so it just was really crazy, like living this experience where you felt like you had it all, and then God takes that from you. It's like a Job experience.
I was about to say, that's in the Bible. We know somebody like that.
Exactly. It's like a Job experience. Like, you start from the end, and he's really like just testing your faith. Are you really standing on the word? Are you really acknowledging the promises that I have for you? Like I said, I would never leave you nor forsake you. Do you really believe that? You said it, you prayed it, you read it. But now it's time to activate that. I did a podcast on activating your faith, and that was one of the key things. Like, it's time to activate that now. Like, we say it, but like, are you really being an example to that? And then you have
that's so good.
Yeah, allow your testimony to really inspire and encourage other people, because you're not alone. You're not alone. Other people face mental health issues. I was hospitalized. I had suicidal ideations, all these different things, because I felt like life was too much. Like, it was too much. Losing everything just felt like too much. We moved back to California, all these different things. It's like life just felt like too much. And especially when you feel like everything that you worked for was just shambles and just into pieces. And it's just like, why? You're asking yourself why. But I finally got to a point where I didn't need to ask why. I know exactly why. I know exactly why, and I understand it had to happen. And now it's like, everything I do, I'm like, Lord, do you like my hair today? Is this what you want me to look like? Is this pleasing to you?
Wow. So, wait, okay. Sorry, 2 seconds.
Okay.
This is. I want
to go back to your first sentence.
This is so good. Like, I personally really needed to hear all of this. What are some verses when you feel like you lost it all, and you're saying, the promises that I'll never leave you nor forsake you. Are there some other verses that you've been leaning on or that you leaned on during that time?
Yes, absolutely. God
Let me get a pen real
will supply you the peace that surpasses all understanding. Like, the peace that I have now, you cannot buy this. Okay, like, there is no amount of dollars, there's no job that I am willing to sacrifice for the peace that I have now, especially coming from a state of anxiety and depression. Like, constantly in my head, thoughts going, you know, like just intrusive thoughts, regular thoughts. I told my therapist, I can't stop thinking. It's like I keep hearing stuff in my head all the time. I just want it to stop, you know?
Yeah. I think we are constantly, our brains are circling.
Yeah.
Like, I'll look at Andy and be like, what are you thinking about? Andy's my husband. I'll be like, so what are you thinking about? And he'll be like, nothing. And I'm like,
what?
I believe that. I believe you're actually not thinking of anything right now. Literally. And like, he isn't. Like, I'm like, how? Like, anyways.
Can't relate.
Yeah, it's like, show me.
I love that you're talking about this because we can all feel like, oh my gosh, I had that crazy thought. Am I crazy? Like, and it's like, no, you know, if we're indulging in wild thoughts, sure. But if things just pop up or insanity like that, that's not necessarily something that we have consented to, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. And we have to cast it down. All the crazy stuff. I do know that for sure. Like, that's something I remember learning, like, growing up and in school is when you have cast down all vain imaginations. I want to say that's in Philippians something. Somewhere in the Bible. You can Google it. But, yeah, when you have those thoughts, just, you know, casting them down immediately and trying to, you know, replace them with a different verse, really.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, so you were talking about how you had to put God first. What are some tangible things that you did in order to be like, you know what? Other than, you know, making time for church.
Yeah.
Like, what are some things where you were like, oh, that's not me putting God first, and this is how I'm going to rearrange that?
So my entire routine changed.
Oh, okay.
My entire routine. So my job before, I woke up at 2:30 in the morning. I went to work. I started at 3. Yeah, exactly. And I felt like if I can get up at 2:30 in the morning for that job, I can get up at 2:30 for the Lord.
Wow. Praise God.
The Lord for myself. Okay. I
Yeah.
started going to the gym. I get up, I pray, I go to the gym, and I turn my Sarah Jakes on or whatever sermon I'm going to listen to. And that's how I start my morning off, you know, just like with God, inviting him, thanking him. Thank you for waking me up, because you didn't have to do it, but you did. Yeah. You know, just like really getting in the routine of that. And not only did that help me establish and grow my relationship with him, like, okay, let me give reverence to God and my thanks to God. Was listening to my sermon, getting my little bit of word in, but I was also working on myself at the same time by being at the gym, something I wanted to be able to do that I couldn't do before, you know? So it's not like every single thing, like we feel like we don't have time, right? I don't have time to pray. I don't have time to get my work.
Wow.
But
this is for me. Okay, keep going. I literally was just talking to someone about like a Bible study thing. And I was like, I just don't have time.
Yeah.
And,
oh my God.
Oh my goodness. I literally just said that today. Yeah. Okay, keep going. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No,
this is so good.
No, seriously, like we're like,
yeah.
I don't have time. That was always my issue. Time. I work a 12-hour job. I have to get up an hour or two ahead of the time. I live 30 minutes away from the job. It takes 30 minutes back. I have to pick the kids up. You know what I mean? So like easily 15 hours of my day is gone, and that's not including sleep. So
right.
I did not have the time, but once all those things were wiped away and like rebuilding my schedule, I had the time, not only for Jesus, the Lord, but for myself, which was very much so needed. Like I got into the gym, I lost 30 pounds, you know, I changed my eating habits, my skin cleared up, like all these things, you know, like,
yeah,
everything I felt like I didn't have time for, suddenly I had just endless amounts of time. It felt like of course not endless, but you know, I had the time to really implement a new routine in my life. And already waking up that early is like, no, I can do it for them. I can do it for me. I can do it for Jesus. You know, like that's what's important to me. And so that's one of the things that I still do. I get up, I go to the gym, I listen to my word, I pray. I'm in the morning, and I do all these things too before the kids get up, because that's like my me time before they get up, before they're getting ready for school, use the bathroom, get them all together, all these different things. But that allows me to put God first and to put myself first, because I can't pour from an empty cup.
Yes.
Yes.
I love
Yeah, like it's so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm running
Yeah.
guys, I don't have anything left, you know. So
Yeah.
I learned, and that one I got from therapy, because I also went into therapy after everything happened as well. And that's what he was like, you're constantly trying to pour from an empty cup, and you know it's impossible for you to do that. You have to give yourself time to be filled back up. And then also not only get filled back up, but not allowing my cup to overflow. You know, there were times I take on too much, but being a superhuman woman, mom, entrepreneur, I had a hard time saying no.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Like,
That's so relatable.
Yes.
I literally just signed on to something that I'm like, why did I do that? I do not have time for that. But yeah, that's so relatable. Wow, I'm so glad we're having this conversation.
I know.
This is so good.
Yeah.
I also,
Go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to say, I also love how, you know, once you started working on your inside, like the outside of you changed as well.
Yeah.
I think that's something that, like, we hear, I feel like you hear that when you're younger, like, oh yeah, you make sure your inside is pretty, but we don't really think about it. We hear it, but we don't really do it. But I just love that, you know, you are the physical manifestation of that you can see it. And that's just a reminder that once we work on a relationship and what's going on in here, other things outside will start, you know, aligning, I guess.
Yes.
So, can you tell us a little bit about how the podcast got its start, where it's at now, where you'd like to see it, etc.?
Yes. So I got back into church. You know, that, and this became a part of my other routine. I got back into church. I started serving, and through serving is where I found my purpose. While I was working out, one of the things I did was listen to a lot of podcasts. I was drowning in podcasts. I listened to them while I'm driving. I listened to them everywhere I'm going. And that was another way I got the word in, you know, and invited God into everything that I was doing. Throw on a podcast while I'm driving the kids to school, throw on a podcast while I'm cleaning or whatever, just so that I'm getting the word constantly in without feeling like it's taking over my life, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Or where I'm not being productive still.
Yeah.
But just, oh no, I forgot. I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. I was just asking, like, when you decided to start.
Oh, sorry. Back to that. Yes. So through all the podcasts, I was like, well, you know what? I feel like I would love to start a podcast, right? I would love to start a podcast. I started serving in my church. I got invited to Terry Nance's book signing, for God's Armor Bearer, where we learned to serve our leader. Like, you know, you want to find your purpose. You want to find what you need, what you should be doing. Go serve your leader, stand next to them. We talked about Elijah and Elisha, the relationship that they had, and how Elisha was a servant, you know, to Elijah until it was his time. So it was just really empowering what Terry Nance had for us. He has 4 books that are really awesome, especially for different generations. He has a new generation book, all these different things, but just really getting empowered by the God's Armor Bearer. And sitting during that conference, God downloaded into me the Anxious Christian podcast, not just the podcast, but the Anxious Christian. And at that moment, I felt like it was a blog, right? It was a blog, but I know that I had a voice, because this was another thing God had downloaded into me. There is an audience for your voice. There are people for your voice. There are people who need to hear your story and know that it's going to be okay, as long as they put their faith and their trust in me. And I am going to be the vessel that he uses to kind of break into this, like, secret. It's not a secret, but people don't talk about it, especially as Christians, right? Because people always say, put your faith. But I'm here standing. I put my faith in God, but sometimes it's wavering. Sometimes I feel lonely. Sometimes I feel scared, sometimes I feel overwhelmed and like I don't know what to do. Like there's times I feel like I can't pray. My sisters in Christ, they've come to my rescue plenty of times. I'm driving, I have a panic attack. Like I have moments where I'm still human, and although I love God, I trust in God with all my heart, I'm still human. My flesh rises up and things still do happen. And not daily, but I mean, I have my moments as well, so I just really wanted to be able to empower other people to be able to talk about it, and not only talk about it, but let them know the situations that I have and the struggles that I personally deal with week to week, day to day, whatever the case may be as well.
Yeah, I know that I am an anxious Christian, so I'm very grateful that you're speaking to this. Mallory, do you have anything else before our big final question?
I can't really think of anything. No, this has been great. I mean, I'm really glad that you're using your testimony. I think that I needed to hear this personally, even if nobody, I'm sure our audience does, but even if if everybody in the audience is like, no, my life is perfect, who needs to hear this? You have blessed me. I appreciate that. Yeah, so, I guess I do have a quick question. Is there a particular, you mentioned some of the verses. Is there like a particular sermon even you listen to or something that has really kept you grounded or that you sometimes go back to?
I tend to, I call it my healing process, my healing season, I listen to a lot of Brian Meadows' podcasts. He's an apostle. Excellent material on healing and deliverance, and he's kind of got a new age swag about him, so it was wonderful for me, because it's not preachy, but he has a certain type of jargon that's kind of still good. And of course I listen to Sarah Jakes every day. I still listen to her words. Woman Evolved, I'm able to relate to her on that level, so that's I listen to her sermons all the time. That really gets me through. Yeah, Woman Evolved is awesome. It's really awesome. Get your morning started, on a good foot.
Awesome. Well, before we let you go, if every girl in the world... Actually, I'm going to have Mallory ask this question because this is the Mallory question for all of us.
Okay, so if every single girl in the entire world was looking at you right now and needed advice from you, what is one piece of advice you would give them? And it doesn't necessarily have to be anxious related. It could be about anything. What would you tell them?
I would tell them what is for you is for you. Don't let anybody stop you. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't. Don't let any thoughts or seeds of doubt that have been planted inside of you stop you. You can do it. You were made for this. You were fearfully and wonderfully made. You were created in God's image, and you have purpose. You have purpose in this life. Just go out and find your purpose through God.
Well, you were prepared. Look at
that. That was good.
That's from the heart.
Love it. That's good. That's
Tell
great.
Tell listeners where they can find you. Other than the podcast, is there anything else we can do to get your content?
Yes, you can follow me on my Instagram, which is tashyamonique.com. I'm going to get better at posting. You can also follow me on Instagram, The Anxious Christian. I'll get better at posting there too. Our website is up too, so you can interact there. I do read the reviews and I respond to everybody on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts as well, Spotify. Wow. So yeah, you can reach me at any of those ways. You can email me info@The Anxious Christian Podcast. I just really love hearing from the people. I am going to have a new segment on the podcast called Testimony Tuesday. So Yeah,
Love
get
that.
ready for that. Yeah, because I feel like we are able to uplift each other with our own
For sure.
stories, you know, and being able to
Amen.
reach the masses like that through relationship with one another. So,
Yeah. I'll link all of these to you guys, so you'll be able to get it however you're listening.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
yeah, I
Yes.
loved it. Thanks you guys for having me.
All
Thank you,
right.
thank you, thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.